Colleagues mocked the new employee every way they could think of. And later, the boss introduced his wife at a corporate party, and everyone froze in shock. Kimberly pulled herself together, and after thinking for a second, came into the office of the trading company. Wasting no time, the woman immediately went to the HR department, where the department head, a pretty woman about 50 years old, told her about the conditions and requirements for the job. "Aren't you worried about the time gap between your graduation and current employment?" Mrs. Goodman asked cautiously. "Oh no, I have long dreamed of working for this kind of company," Rachel replied with a charming smile. "Well then, I won't put any spokes in your wheels. I'd be a fool if I didn't hire someone so determined. So congratulations, you're hired. Grace will bring you up to speed. She's the office admin. See that pretty brown-haired woman over there? That's her," Mrs. Goodman said, writing something in the register. Grace turned out to be a pleasant young woman who simply and bluntly told the new manager about the intricacies of her work. "We have a good company, but if I'm being honest, the team is kind of mean, especially Laura and Nicole. You can expect them to play dirty, especially at first, so I advise you to keep your eyes wide open. And I also recommend that you never leave your computer turned on and set a password on it, for your own good," said the administrator and confidently touched the newcomer's hand. The next morning, Kimberly arrived at the office before everyone else and immediately earned an approving glance from Mrs. Goodman. "You are one early bird, aren't you? Our office queens don't usually come in until 9, said Grace, who liked the new employee more with each passing second. Kimberly got a table in the far corner of the office, which was sort of hidden from everyone's prying eyes. The woman immediately turned on her computer and started searching for and processing orders. But before she had time to work even an hour, 2 spectacularly dressed women approached her, one of whom said, "Oh, you're new, aren't you? You know what? Go make us some coffees." Choosing not to aggravate the situation, Kimberly nodded and continued working. She already guessed that the girls who came up to her were the very Lauren and Nicole that Grace had warned her about. An hour passed, and the impudent girls were still waiting for their coffee. Finally, unable to bear it, Nicole came up and asked sharply, "What's happening? Where's my coffee?" In response to this, Kimberly smiled sweetly at her and said with emphatic respect, "Your coffee is probably still in the dining room. I don't think it'll make itself while you're standing here." Nicole's face immediately turned purple, and evil light started dancing in her eyes. "Okay then, if you don't want to take the easy route, we'll go the hard way instead," added the vengeful woman, and turning on her heels, went to her table. Kimberly hid a smile in the corner of her lips and continued working as if nothing happened. When all the employees went out for lunch, Grace came up to the new manager and said, "You shouldn't have done it. Now they're going to make your life a living hell. Nicole has an in at the company. Her aunt works as the chief accountant here. That's why she thinks she can do whatever she wants. And Laura thinks she can charm our boss. Looks like you've already made some enemies here." "It's okay. We'll see who will take the win," Kimberly replied with a smile and got back to work. On her first day at the office, the woman processed twice as many orders as Laura and Nicole combined. Kimberly's secret was simple: hard work and perseverance. Meanwhile, the hateful woman never started working before drinking a cup of coffee or two and sharing all the latest news with each other. Hence, their low productivity, which had a detrimental effect on the success of the company. Of course, Kimberly's success didn't go unnoticed, which made Laura and Nicole even more mad at her. Most of the time, the colleagues manifested their dislike in all kinds of dirty tricks, which they played on Kimberly to annoy her. It was usually a stained, sticky chair or a cup of coffee spilled on her keyboard. Over time, the woman got used to their tricks, and therefore she made sure to always check her chair for any liquids before sitting down at her desk. Kimberly worked at the company for about a month, and during all this time, the only people who were friendly and kind to her were Grace and the administrator, Mrs. Goodman. Everyone was tensely waiting for the moment when Laura and Nicole would finally get the new employee to quit, like they once did with Grace. Grace wanted to work as a manager and become the head of the department one day, just like you. But the obnoxious woman didn't let her get the slightest chance. So I offered Grace the position of administrator, and I have never once regretted my decision, Mrs. Goodman said with pride in her voice. "I don't know. If it were up to me, I would have fired them both a long time ago. All they care about is fashion and restaurants, and they're too lazy to work," Kimberly shared. In response, the HR manager just shook her head, complaining that the obnoxious friends had a very influential person. But Kimberly had her own thoughts on this matter, and unlike everyone else in the office, she knew much more than it might have seemed. The truth was that the woman drove a very expensive car to work, which she parked 2 blocks away from the office so no one would see it. Also, Kimberly was married to Gordon Smith, the same Gordon Smith who was the owner of the company. About 6 months ago, the businessman decided to ask his wife to manage the company for him. Gordon's firm was expanding, and he simply couldn't manage all the branches on his own. Moreover, the businessman owed everything he had to Kimberly, who was very smart and understood economics and office politics very well. "Honey, I don't mind taking over management of the company, but I have one condition. Before taking the lead, I want to get to know the team as their peer," the woman said, touching her husband's shoulder. "That's my Kimberly. I see you haven't lost your love for conducting all kinds of checks and tests since your university years," Gordon said with a smile. Kimberly spent her gap years between graduation and work raising their son, Kevin, who was born immediately after his mother graduated from the university. And so, when the boy was old enough to be left with a nanny, Kimberly decided to join her husband and work on their family business. To do so, the young woman planned this ruse, which was now nearing its final phase. Wearing the mask of an inconspicuous office worker, Kimberly set out, implementing her plan. "When should I introduce you as the new boss?" Gordon asked when his wife had already worked at the office for about 2 weeks. "Soon, I think. Give me a little more time to get a better feeling of the staff and the company," Kimberly replied, ruffling her husband's hair. And the next day, an announcement was made at the office. A corporate party would be held for the employees to introduce the new head of the branch. Being the office beauty, Nicole couldn't pass up this opportunity to offend the new manager yet again. "Do you have anything to wear, or will you be going to the party in your grandmother's dress?" the obnoxious woman asked with a malicious smile. "I'll be fine. You better worry about yourself, since it will be hard to find your style at thrift stores," Kimberly retorted without batting an eye. The entire office instantly burst in loud laughter, causing Nicole's face to blush. The woman realized that the newcomer had won this round, thanks to her sharp sense of humor. Later that night, as Kimberly was driving home in her car, she suddenly noticed Grace at the bus stop, shrinking under the piercing fall wind. The public transport was running late, and the woman was freezing waiting for it at the stop. Kimberly's heart sank with pity, and without a moment's hesitation, she slowed down next to the bewildered Grace. "Don't look at me like that, and get inside," the woman said with a smile, gesturing for Grace to get in. "Wow, where did you get such a gorgeous car? Looks like it's worth a lot of money," Grace exclaimed in surprise. Kimberly didn't respond, brushing off Grace's question and changed the subject. "Are you going to the corporate party on Friday?" the woman asked, confidently maneuvering between the rows of cars. "No, probably not. I don't have a dress, and I don't have the money to buy it. My mom has been sick, and she's needed more meds lately," Grace replied with a sad sigh. Kimberly couldn't ignore the situation. She felt very sorry for the unfortunate woman, who was struggling to help her sick mother. "You know what? Let's go shopping right now and buy you a new dress," Kimberly suggested. "No, don't even think about it. I don't have that kind of money, and I won't be able to pay you back," Grace answered quickly. Kimberly didn't respond. She simply drove to the nearest boutique, where she bought Grace the dress that she liked. "Thank you so much. I am so grateful," the woman said with tears in her eyes. "No thanks needed, honey. I'll be waiting for you on Friday at the corporate party. Now, let me take you home," said Kimberly and smiled encouragingly. Despite the fact that there were so many orders, the work week seemed to have no end. Finally, when the long-awaited Friday arrived, all the employees at the firm were in high spirits, anxiously waiting for the upcoming changes. Everyone knew that the owner of the company, Gordon Smith, was going to introduce the new head of the branch that day. Nicole and Laura, dressed in the latest fashion, were surprised to see Grace's chic dress, since they never thought of her as someone with good taste. But the real shock came when the obnoxious women saw their boss, Gordon Smith, introduce Kimberly as the new head of the branch. "How is that possible? Is this some kind of a joke?" Laura exclaimed, still refusing to believe her eyes. "Dear employees, to answer all your questions, I'd like to tell you that Kimberly is my wife, and I owe everything to her and no one else," Therefore, I'm excited to see her step in as the new head of our company," said Gordon Smith in a tone that wasn't open to any objection. All the attendees clapped in approval, and only Laura and Nicole stood with their heads down. The obnoxious friends realized that their rule of the company was over. This meant only one thing: having an in with the chief accountant won't save them anymore. They were definitely going to be fired. But the happiest of them all was Grace, who stood there with tears of gratitude in her eyes. The first decision Kimberly made was to appoint Grace the head of the department. The new boss understood that the woman had been a great employee for many years, giving her best to the company, and there was no doubt that she deserved a promotion. Moreover, by a personal order of the owner of the company, Gordon Smith, a large amount of money was allocated for the treatment of Grace's mother, allowing her to undergo surgery and rehabilitation at one of the best medical centers in the country. Having taken over the management of her husband's company, Kimberly completely changed the atmosphere at the office, eradicating ridicule and division into us and strangers in the team.